All right, and we're back, and it's COMP123, and it's week 12, lesson 12, part 6, I think, right? Let me just check if I'm at part 6 right now from a movie's perspective. We're out there. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait a minute. Did I miss part 3? Oh, no, it's here. It's here. Definitely part 6. Definitely part 6. I just named it wrong. Okay. So we're at part 6, and we've just finished talking about how to move between forms. Right, we have two forms, first form and second form. We can go back and forth, and we're not instantiating a new form. And now my question to you is, this X, I want to close down the form. Well, here's my first form. If I close this box, my whole application closes, right? How do I pass on control, right, so that when I click the close button on the second form, or the X button, the X, which is a control, right? But it's a built-in control to every form. When I click this X button, what is it really doing, right? How do I close this off? Okay, well, let's take a look at that for a second. I'm going to go back to first form, and I'm going to click on the form itself and go to properties here on the right-hand side, and let's take a look at a couple things. So here, first of all, it says control box true. Control box true means that this whole box here is on. If I take this control box and make it false, just for a second, my control box should be gone, right? That means I can't close it off from here, right? Control box is false. Okay. I don't have a cancel button, right? Here's another one. There's a cancel button in here, and cancel button says next button. That's not really true. It doesn't cancel anything, right? So that's not cool. And I also have another one called, which we haven't mentioned before, called an accept button. Here's an accept button, which I can also say is also next button or whatever. I'm not going to mention those things, but hey, I get an accept button and a cancel button. That's almost like a message box. So here's a way I can make a custom message box by using kind of putting in place an accept button or a cancel button and assigning them to certain buttons that already exist. That's cool. How do I close off when I use the X, right? And again, I have some other options here. I have maximize box. That's true. That's this maximize box up here. Right? I have a minimize box, probably most likely here. I have a maximize box. That's true. My grip style is auto, right? I can also make it hide, so I can't change anything here. My start position is center screen. My tag, my text, topmost is false. Use wait cursor. Windows state is normal, right? Minimize, maximize. I can start off different ways. How do I close off, my form, my application from another form, not the first form? That's what I want you guys to look up while I talk about other things. Okay, so I'll let you guys do that. But I like the solution that we have so far for moving between forms. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home and Changes. So you're going to need this for your assignment number 7, this switching between forms idea, right? Again, there's a couple ways of doing this, but the way of going between two forms without creating a new one is a good way of doing it. So let's go in here, and I'm going to say added second form. Let's call it with capital S, second form, and buttons to show and hide each form. Okay, long commit, a little bit too long. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to go to Home and go to Unsync Commits and click Sync. So you should have what I have up on GitHub, which is important. Yeah, I got a couple forms back and forth. And I want to go back, while you guys are looking up how to close off, I want to go back to the next thing. So I want to talk about common dialog boxes really quickly. Again, there's some predefined dialog boxes that are available to things like specifying colors and fonts, printing, opening, and saving. All that stuff is there. Let's take a look at that. If I go to under dialogues, where it says dialogues, right? You have a pointer, a color dialog, a font browser dialog, font dialog, open file dialog, save file dialog, all these dialog boxes that are part of this, these common dialogs. The two that I think we should kind of hit is, and this is the general form, which is whatever the dialog object is, show dialog. It can't be just a show. When you show a dialog object, built-in form, basically, that's dialog form, you have to use the method show dialog, not just show. Show and hide are only for our forms, the forms here, right? Hey, hold on a second. Show dialog. Show dialog. Can I, with my second form, right? If I go instead of show, my next form, can I use show dialog for this form? Hold on. Show dialog. Well, I can. And doesn't work. Well, how come? Why doesn't it work? It's there. It's part of my form. Let's try it out, right? Next form, I click the next button and it goes. Worked for me, right? How about if I click this now? Still, that doesn't do anything for us in terms of functionality. Functionality-wise, show and show dialog for us is very simple. They do slightly different things though, right? Slightly different things. So I'm gonna go kind of show, back to that. Oops. All right. I want to create this close function off. So when I kind of do my second form, right? If I click on the form itself and go to properties and then hit this lightning bolt, what are the things I can do here? I can do auto size change, back color change, cause validation, click change UI, client size change, control add, control remove, cursor change, deactivate, doc change, drag and drop, drag enter, enable change, enter, font change, form closing, form closed, help button clicked, key down, load, maximize bounds change, maximize size change, minimum size change, mouse click, mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse up, move, padding. Was that? Form close something else. That's not really the one we need. Paint, parent change, parent, preview, region change, resize, scroll shown, size change, style change, text change, validating, invisible. So nothing there that I can obviously see that if I was in my mind, I'm thinking if I close that button off, it'll close the form off. It'll close it off. What does it do when I close that off? It definitely hides the form again, but it's being hidden by another way, right? Because the other form, my original form isn't closed. My original form is hidden. Hey, here's a question. What if I went to my first form and instead of hiding it, I closed it? Would that cause an error? Let's try that out. So I'm going to try and do this form.close. I can do that. I close the form, then I hide the other one. Maybe it should be done in the other order. But let's just try that out for a second. Clickety-click, click next. Oh man, right? That didn't work. Can't close off the form because the other form isn't created yet. So what if I did it the second way? If I went like this, right? And instead of this here, this command, I created my form, my primary form, and showed the other one, but closed this one off after. Well, if I show this one, were we still in this next button click? Let's see. Can I do that? So I go, bam, bam, next. Oh man, it worked, right? Closed off the form nicely, but it didn't show this one, right? So something to do with the close idea is what we want, right? I definitely don't want to use close here though. I want to use, what am I doing? I want to use hide, because for right now, we want to use the hide method because that's what does what we want. So hide is where we hide the form, but later on we want to close the owner, right? Somehow when we click that X, that owner is closed. I want to close off the owner. When you close the owner off, we set the second form to close as well. What was that? Yeah, environment exhibit. How do you go? How do you instantiate? How do you? It's fine, but form close, is that when I'm closing the form, that'll work. If I close the form off, right? Will that also happen when I go back? Let's try that out. I like your thinking though. This is one solution that we're getting. So I go back to second form, and here on the form closed event, if I double click on it, I get this new second form closed, and in here I want to say, well, when this form is closed, I want to say this dot owner, right, dot close. I can do that, right? Close this form, the other form is closed too, right? Let's see that. See if it works. So I run it. Next, I go here, and instead of going, I can go back, go next. If I click this, Doesn't do it, right? Doesn't close nothing. All right, do the environment. I'll do the environment. See if it works, right? Hey man, what happened? Holy crap, I got this like, it parachuted me back in here, but it took a while, right? How come, right? I went to my designer. I don't want to see that. So instead you say environment.close, right? So environment.exit. That's a kind of harsh exit, eh? And parenthesis 0, so nothing's wrong, is what you're saying. There's no environment 0, exit 0 means I'm exiting and there's nothing wrong. I can actually put something else in there and it can show that I show another code in there, a custom code, that shows I exited, but I exited, it's bad, right? Let's go. So let's try this out. So go next form, and I click this button here, and we're done. Okay, cool, cool. What about, can I use also, let's go back. Can I go back? Yeah, I can go next and back. But that form closed, or form closing operation, so if you notice, form closed is the event handler that I need to close the form off. Second form closed, right? And if I go environment exit, it works. What if I do application exit? Will that work too? Application.exit. If I can do form exit, I should be able to do application.exit because you tried that out already, right? Last day. Let's try this out. So I like environment, but I like application more. If I can make that work, and it does, that's the way to go. So let's use application.exit. I like environment, but I'm wary about environment. Environment chokes me, okay? When I got to give error controls or error like messages back, that means something's wrong, right? Environment usually is used for errors. I want to close the environment down and I want to send an error message back out, right, to whatever the opening form is. But application exit is a smooth, I'm closing off my application, right? So I would use that. Okay, so now we know how to open, close, and I have to use that extra event inside the second form to close off that form with application.exit. Okay, very, very simple so far. Let's go back. We're still working on something else here. So I got my dialogues, and this is the way I have a couple new ones. I have this one called Color Dialog 1 Show Dialog, and I have another one that's Font Dialog 1 Show Dialog. I got a couple dialogues here. This is the method. This is the general form. If I was going to create a built-in dialog I want to use, right? Okay, again, we talked about our show dialog being modal. When I open up a dialog box or a message box, it's modal. Modeless windows that I open up that are modeless means I can go shift between the two windows and it doesn't matter. One's not going to affect the other one. But all of my windows so far that I've shown you are modal windows, which means they take control of the screen and you have to click close or respond to the modal window before you can do something else. Like an alert box in JavaScript or some kind of message box in this C# environment. It's a modal box. You have to click on it before you can. It takes control of the application until you click onto it. Again, bad form, right? Let's go back. So again, here's the dialog box. An example would be the color dialog, right? So this label back color, right, and is equal to the dialog box color, right? Well, how do I do this dialog box anyway, this color dialog? Well, let's go back. So if I'm going to add a color dialog to the second form, right? So my second form, I have a color dialog I want to get to. How do I add this? Well, if I go back to Toolbox, and if I'm going to pin the tail here for a second. I'm going to just unpin this one just for 1 second, so we have more room. I'm going to kind of get rid of common controls and go back to dialogues. So here's dialogues, and if you notice, there's a bunch of different dialogues. One of them is this color dialog, right? Well, this is cool. I can drag and drop color dialog, and it adds that kind of control to our form down here, right? Here's my dialog, color dialog. It's not activated yet because I don't have a button to change the colors. So I'm going to make a copy of this button, my back button. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to say, I'm going to call this back button. I'm going to go open up properties again. I'm going to go back to properties. I'm going to go to pin this one and change this back button, right? Instead of back button, it's going to be color button, right? And down here under color button, I want to change this text where it says back to color. Right? We'll use the Canadian spelling. How about that for this one? I probably should have done the same thing for the actual name of the button here. Instead of color button. Sorry, I'm in my American mode. Color. Color, right, is what the Americans would say. How come color is spelled that way? Well, it's the British spelling, right? Okay, so when I click the color button, I want the color dialog to pop up, right? How do I make it pop up? I want to go in here. I want to unpin these for a second so you guys can see. So here's my color button. When I click the color button, I want my color dialog, which is called color dialog 1, by the way, to show dialog. Right? Here's my show dialog. Right? Well, that's good. It doesn't do anything right now. Right? Let's try this out. So I'm going to run the form. Here's my first form. Go to my next form. Here's my color. Click color. Whoa, this color dialog box, which is built in, comes in. I want to choose a color like this. And I'm going to press OK, and it goes away, but it doesn't do anything. Why? Because I'm getting a response back, and I got to deal with that response, just like I did with my message box. I got to set up some kind of responder or some kind of container. Let me just X out of this for a second. How do I do that? I can assign a color to the back color before it closes off, right? Well, this is cool. Whatever the color dialog 1 color is, I can do that. When I press OK, right? The select color is stored in a property that can be accessed, it says, right? It's part of the color dialog 1 property. So I want to say this, whatever color I chose, I want to change the color of a certain thing. Like, for example, the form, right? So I want to change the active form color. All right, that's cool. So let's try this out. So I'm going to say, well, when my color dialog box is shown, it can close off. And then inside this thing, I want to say my active form, which is called by now, I've kind of named it to next form. I did it here, right? Which is my active form. I could say this or my active form, right? So I say active form. Let's try this out. Active form dot back color, right, is equal to color dialog. I'll bring this up for a second so you guys can all see. Color dialog 1 dot color, right? Let's just try this out really quickly. So there's one dialog. So my back color, whatever I choose my back color is going to be, my active form takes the color of the color that I want, right? Forever my font, my little color dialog comes up, I choose the color, and then poof, my active form gets changed. Let's try this out. So, I go next form, go to color, I choose a weird color like this, and press OK, and then bam, my color is changed. Huh? So really cool, useful functionality of the built-in dialogues, right? Very, very cool functionality. Again, by the way, this is all up on this PowerPoint presentation, so if you're not caught up or if I'm going too fast, please look it up. You can do the same thing with font dialog, where you can change the fonts of the form or an object, right? By choosing whatever the last font is. If I want to bring up the font dialog, right, it stores it inside the color dialog or font dialog object. So the object itself, which is part of the form. So if you go back down here to the second form, you notice there's an object that's way down here. It's a container object that contains the last choice that you made, right? So you can assign whatever you chose, whatever your object, as long as you didn't choose cancel, it'll accept whatever your choice is, store it there, and you can access it just like I did here, where I said whatever my last choice is from my show dialog. Okay? So font dialog works the same. So here's show dialog. Here's an example of this. Color dialog 1 dot color is equal to whatever the for color is. I can accept that. I can also pass colors into it, right? So if I say my for color, whatever my label is or my form, my for color, I want to pass it in there. That'll be the default color. So let me show you that. So here's my color dialog. Before I open up my color dialog, right? It's there. I can say color dialog 1 dot for color, or sorry, dot color, right, is equal to active form dot for color, right? So my active form has a for color already. So when I open up my dialog box now, it actually goes to that for color. Oh, wait, that's my for color. That's not the one I wanted, right? I meant, see what I changed? That's bad, eh? Let's go back. I meant back color. Not my for color. You can make for color, back color, whatever you want, right? Well, because now look, take a look at this. If I run this now, and if I go back into my color dialog box, it shows my color. Oh, wait, that's not right. That's not my back color. Man, if I press OK, poof, right? Nothing happened. What it's supposed to do is highlight which of these colors the active form of the back color is, right? So if I choose this and press OK, it'll change my back color to whatever it is. I'm supposed to pass into the form what my color is, right? And that's what I was trying to do, active form.backColor. And the same thing goes for fonts. If you want to take the label font or whatever, and I'm not going to show you the font dialog. It's very similar to the color dialog. I just want you to know these two things exist. Okay, moving on. Context menus are cool. I'm not going to cover them, but they're like menus, and there's a little bit of a step-by-step here on how to do a context menu for yourself to learn how to do them. All they are is when I right-click on a particular form, it'll give me a context menu that'll come up, right? That I can click instead of a menu that's on the top. It'll be a little context menu. And there's a way of doing that if you follow this step-by-step that I kind of gave you here. Moving on. List boxes and combo boxes you do need for your final project. So let's talk about this a little bit. This is a longer discussion that we're going to probably carry over to next week. Okay? Let's try this out. So the first thing is list boxes and combo boxes are slightly different than the kind of controls that we've had before, in that they have a couple of additional properties we have to be aware of. Right? Remember, in your assignment 7, I asked you to populate the list, right, with certain items. There's a couple ways to do that. You can do that programmatically, and you can do that through the UI, right? Let's look at that. So again, these are different kinds of list boxes, and these are combo boxes. There's different kinds of styles for drop-down boxes and list boxes, right? So if I add a list box to the form, right, as an example, list boxes look like this. They're actually very similar, right? Combo boxes and list boxes have just slightly different styles. All right, so let's try that out. So let's go to my first form now. Here's my first form, and I'm going to go to back up to our components, our common controls, right? And if I go to list box, I'm going to try and drag and drop a list box on here. Here it is. Here's my list box. Gives you kind of a default style for it. And if I do a combo box next to it, let's just do a combo box over here, right? And let's make it so that they actually fit onto that form. There it is, right? So I got a list box and a combo box, right? A list box, if I go back to properties over here, and if I pin the tail here, let's pin it, right? If you notice, it has an items property here. If I go to list box, I haven't named this list box yet, right? But if you notice, there's a collection. It says collection with items. Right now, the items are empty, right? List box. Okay, so let's add some items in there, in the collection. Like, for example, let's add some cities. Like, for example, Toronto will be the first one. And let's say Montreal. And let's put in there Calgary, some other things there. How about New York? And Nassau, because, you know, I was just recently there, right? What the hell? And let's put in, you know, some other cities like Paris, and maybe another one like London. Right? Paris and London, some cities in the world, mostly in Canada. Press OK. Well, they appear here in the order that you want them, right? So if I press OK, press Start, my first form then would show inside my list box a bunch of cities, and I can select them. It looks like, right? And my combo box shows nothing because I didn't program any of that, right? Let's X out of there, and then in my combo box, do I have a collection? I certainly do. Let's just be smart and go into my collection for my items here. There's a difference between both. I'm going to just copy all this, Control C, and I'm going to go back into my combo box, and I haven't named these things yet, I will. And inside here, Control V, so I've got kind of both the same. Now it doesn't show up here, does it? Right? If I go to here on my design side, it doesn't show up. But if I run this thing, right, then if I drop down, I do have this Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, New York, London, all this kind of stuff, right? I have all this in here. And then I have it over here too. Well, there's two different things here. There's two different controls. They handle things differently. Okay, that's cool. They don't do anything right now. What if there is a sorted property, right? For example, my sorted property right now is false. I can turn this to true, right? Calgary, London, it kind of sorts it all for you. And I can do the same thing. Here's my, do I have a sorted property for my combo box? I do. I can sort this to true, right? And I can basically start this off. So now my sorted property shows everything in order, and so does this, right? These two combo boxes. What if I start typing my combo box up here, and I start typing Toronto? Well, it doesn't do anything right now, right? I can choose Toronto because it's an option, and it'll actually select something that I can select in my combo box. Here, it's just like a list that kind of comes up. This is the two styles we've used so far. Well, there's different styles I can assign too, right? If I go to my list box, And again, I can look at some of these styles. I'm going to go back. Background style, back style, border style. I can choose these things to as well. My data source, which is none. I could link it to a data source if I wanted. Don't want that right now. We haven't talked data. Display member, right? Draw mode enabled. Right now my draw mode is regular. Font. I can choose my font size. Right now my font size is 8. I can make it 14 like I normally do, but it'll haunt me, right? It'll be big. Same thing with this one. I can change my font style. I can set my font style to 14 too. It's pretty large. Might not work very well for this form. And if I run this thing, you'll see there'll be an issue, right? Here's I get a bit of a scroll bar happening now, right? Even though it didn't exist before in my my list box, it's there now because it doesn't show all the objects automatically. Windows knows about that. And same thing with my drop-down. My drop-down's big now too, right? See my drop-down? Okay, cool. What about if I want to extend this thing? If I want to make it kind of go down a little bit more to show all the items, like here, there's not going to be a scroll bar anymore, right? No scroll bar. Still in sorted order. Okay, cool. My form border style, or here's one. I don't want my form. I want to go back to this thing. General member, horizontal extent, items is my collection, location, minimum size and maximum size. I could set that up for sure. Scroll always visible. I mean, I could put my scroll bar there. Selection mode 1. I could also put multiple selections by using the control key. Remember, you see sometimes that you want to choose like more than one city, right? Use tab stops. Use weight cursor. These are the things that I kind of immediately see that I could assign from my styles. Okay, let's go back. So again, different kinds of list boxes, but they're showing different styles here. Here's my drop-down combo box, my simple combo box, my drop-down list, right? There's 3 different things here that it shows. It's very similar to this, isn't it? Well, my combo box also has different styles. Again, I have a data source if I want to, display member. As an example, I can display member. Right now it's none. My draw mode, all this kind of stuff is here. Drop down width is 121. I can enable it. I have a flat style. I have font, my font color, my formatting, all these other properties that we normally would see, right? Margin and some modifiers. Right now it's private. I can make it public, protected internal, whatever. And I put the sorted property on, but where does it say that I can change my style of my box? Well, drop-down style is where we do it. We do it both from a list box. My combo box, it says list box controls and combo box controls have most of the same properties and operate in a similar fashion. But one exception is that the combo box control has a drop-down style property, which determines whether or not the list box also has a text box for user entry, and whether or not the list will drop down, right? Both list boxes and combo boxes have a great feature. If the box is too small, then the scroll bar comes up automatically, which we showed you. And you do not have to be concerned with the location of the scroll box. It comes up, it just happens, right? So again, we choose the style according to the space we want. How do we change the style of our list box? Well, if I was to make this really small like this, right? As an example, you can see that it would just be a different kind of box. I've just resized it. And if you notice now, I can kind of dial up or down, right? Almost like a kind of a dial control. It's still a list box, right? But I've just resized it, and Microsoft Visual Studio changes it right away. If I make it 2, there's still these bars here, and it's just up and down. Once I make it into 3, I get the scroll bar, right? And if I make it all big, then the scroll bar goes away because it's big enough to see everything. If you look at, they also have this little smart object here. If I click on the smart side, it says use Databound Items, which means I can bind this to a data object, which we're not going to do right now. Or I can edit the items, which allows me to go back into string in the collection that I made, right? That's what this thing does. Okay, here though, I can't resize my combo box, right? If I go to my smart objects, it says edit my items. I can still do the same thing here, but I have a drop-down style for my combo box that doesn't exist for my list box. So if I click on this and I go back up to drop-down style, here it is right here. Right now it's a drop-down. right? And if I go in here, I can say simple. Here's my simple drop-down style. It changes the way my list box, my combo box looks. It looks almost like a list box, right? And if I run this thing now, if I type Calgary, right, and click away, well, it doesn't really do anything yet, right? But I could type something up in here, right? I could start typing in here. Now, this is interesting. If I wanted whatever I type in here to select the item, it would be an event, right? So when I start typing in here, I want to highlight the item that it matches. Okay? I could do that. We're going to talk about that next day, how to do that kind of stuff really quickly. One more thing. If I go back in here and I change my drop-down style, right, here's my drop-down style, from simple, right, to drop-down list. Now, it hides everything, yeah? Let's take a look. So this is my drop-down list. It doesn't show it to me until I click the button. Then it kind of brings it up. So there's nothing in here, right? It just shows a list, almost like a drop-down that I can choose to turn on and off at my whim. So again, both controls do something that are very similar. Both controls have the sorted property. Both controls have a collection. The main key feature that we're going to focus on for next day, which is going to be the end of our assignment number 3, or assignment number 7 now, 3. I don't know why I'm stuck on 3. My mind is 3, right? Is this, if I go down here, right, each one of these things has a property called selected index, which we're going to get to. It's not here, it's not listed, but if I go to my drop-down style for a second and go back to the way it was before, right, which is drop-down, right, that's how originally how it starts off. There is something called a selected index, and I'm going to get to it, right? I'm going to get to it because I can fill the list here and I can fill the list programmatically, right? Because, and this is where we're going to get talking about lists next time, because lists are a special type of array, right, that is not a fixed size. A list you have different kinds of controls that you can add to. For example, I can say I can add to the list by doing this. So here's my school list box items.add, right? And I can add a member to that list. I can do that by using the add method, right, which we're going to show you in next day as a default. And I can also listen for my selected item. So depending on what my selected item is, I'm just going to scoot ahead here. Here's my selected index property. Each of these list boxes or combo boxes has a selected index property, and I can listen for which selected index it is. Right? If I haven't selected anything, then my selected index property is a -1, right, to show that nothing's selected. I can test for this thing. So depending on what's selected, I can take my index, right, as an example, and I can show which one is selected. I have no minutes left. So that's what we're going to focus on next week when we get together quickly. Please finish off assignment number 6. And please start assignment number 7 as soon as possible.